Okay, yeah, we are live.
All right.
We're just getting your butt. Yeah, it's working.
Sorry.
I got no salad in my teeth.
You got to pay for that. Hi, everybody out there on the internet. We are here at JK Not Kidding Studios, just outside of Detroit, Michigan. This is our series, Candid Conversations with Professional Musicians. We have a great one here today. We have Dalton Thomas. Dalton is a drummer. He's a producer. He's a musician. He's a gigging guy. He's all over the place. He lives in Nashville right now, but he's going to answer some questions, all the great stuff you want to know about touring, playing gigs, playing in bands, production, all of that stuff. So Dalton, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me out.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. Tell me, how'd you start drumming?
So I started playing, I was about 6 or 7. My dad is a songwriter. Grew up around him writing with friends, doing sessions with friends in Tennessee and Nashville and in Austin as well. So I was always at, like, especially when we were in Texas, it was like, Green Hall and the honky tonks kind of around just kind of central Texas outside of Austin. I was running around like with a Coca-Cola and a lollipop with my friends playing wiffle ball, but was around the music all the time. So being around that, one of his friends and co-writers, collaborators over the years, Walt Wilkins, is a great, amazing artist in Texas. We were at his house and he had a drum set up and I was tapping on it and I was really obsessed with AC/DC at the time as a 6-year-old. So
Pretty cool 6-year-old.
Yeah, that's where my music taste came from. First 2 CDs were Toby Keith's Greatest Hits and AC/DC Back in Black. So I had that on my my CD player on the bus with me, so I knew, TNT, it's the boom, 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 boom. And so I was tapping that on the toms because I didn't really understand how drums worked yet. But I could hear the tones that was going on, the kind of back and forth between those 2 notes. So on the way home, I asked Dad if I could get a drum set, and so he got me a drum set. I think at 7 from like Walmart or something. Just like a beginner
Classic.
little tight kit. And yeah, that's where I started playing. Did like kind of started on my own. Later did band in high school, marching band, symphony band. But I started playing at church at a pretty young age, around like 9 or 10. So that was kind of like the beginning of like me wanting to become a musician, like learning what it's like to play with other people, collaborating on songs, learning songs, how to learn songs, how to learn parts. And it kind of came more for me in an ear sense of what I was hearing before it was anything that I was reading or learning in that way.
Interesting. So did you take drum lessons at that point, or were you just kind of jamming along to your favorite songs early on?
Yeah, it was a lot of jamming to my favorite songs. Like I said, I had the, AC/DC Back in Black and Toby Keith's Greatest Hits. So I just like sonically learned what to hear for those parts. And I always felt like drums is like, as a kid or even, an adult, like trying to learn drums, it's really frustrating at first because there's all this coordination between limbs. But if you just keep at it and you keep going, eventually you hit kind of an anchor point where you're like, oh, like this hand and this foot kind of line up together and this hand line up here. And there was a moment where it just kind of clicked for me. So yeah, it all started kind of just like playing in my garage, playing in my basement. God bless my mother for putting up with the loud sounds and clashing.
Yeah. I think so. You weren't a pots and pans guy.
A little bit as a kid, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely like kind of, my mom has a picture of me with a little toy drum at maybe 2 years old, and I was always hitting on pans with my dad's friends when he'd have songwriting sessions and whatnot. I'd be kind of knocking on stuff. But yeah, like I said, that time in our friend Walt's house with his drum set was kind of the real first of like, this is something I think I'd be interested in doing.
That's cool. That guy, what was his last name again?
Walt Wilkins.
Great name, Walt Wilkins. Like,
yeah.
If you're not a killer country artist with that name, I mean, I don't know what else you could do. But the reason I ask, I at one point wanted a drum set. I was a pots and pans guy. I've been playing guitar for a while, and I wanted a drum set, and I got a keyboard for Christmas. So my mom seems to deny that this was the case. She's like,
oh, really?
I don't remember you asking for a drum set. I thought you wanted a keyboard. I'm like, I see how it is.
There's a keyboard. Usually in a keyboard, there's like a drum pad or like an electric drum set that you can kind of play on.
I spent many years trying to convince my brother to get it, to play drums just so we could get one, but that never happened. But
start a little band.
So fast forward, at some point, you're going to college, you're thinking, hey, what do I want to do? Did you know pretty quickly on, I'm going to music school, that's it for me?
Yeah, yes and no. I kind of dragged my feet a little bit. I knew I wanted to do it, but just didn't feel like it was an actual possibility. Even though growing up around a lot of professional musicians, it just seemed something that was a little bit out of touch, to reach for. Got a lot of support from my family, and talked about that. And they were really forward about, like, if you want to do this, do it, and just give your all on it, put 100% in, no excuses, and do it. And so I was like, late, had signed up for community college after high school, was going to do that. And then last minute, I saw actually my dad saw this ad online for a school called DIME, Detroit Institute of Music Education. And so I ended up watching this new school starting in downtown Detroit. And I was like, well, that could be cool, because the other options was like going to Belmont in Nashville, which is like $60,000 a year, or going to like Berkeley, which is like $80,000 a year, which was out of my budget by far. Dime was kind of at a place where they were starting up, and they were offering scholarships based on, I think you had to write an essay kind of about like why you want to do what you do, and you had to do a performance to match that and kind of show where you were at. And so I wrote one of the essays and got a part-time part scholarship with them, and ended up going there. Their program is a bachelor's degree, but it's accredited through a British university called Falmouth. And so this was like kind of their first plant in the United States at being an accredited college. So yeah, I went into that and spent 3 years there. It was a 3-year program. My instructor, his name is Eric Gaston. He goes by Rain Man. He plays for Charlie Wilson.
Oh, very cool.
He's a great drummer, and was a great teacher during that time of just kind of breaking down just all the different things about being a professional musician, from your gear to the parts you learn or the parts you're playing, or your business, like how you collect yourself, showing up on time, just like things that make you a professional musician when you show up to a gig.
Yeah, I would love to elaborate on that a little bit. The showing up on time thing is such a beautiful thing that often is overlooked, sometimes by me, I will admit. But it's funny. It's just funny how if you're there for the gig, most of the time you're going to get it, because then somebody else is not going to show up, and then you could step in.
Yeah.
And it's so funny how a simple thing like that, like being there, being on time, getting your stuff ready, having your gear, not break down.
Yeah.
It's a huge part of it. And I think
absolutely
in today's day and age, just like email, texting, whatever, like communication is huge, that I often think a lot of people overlook.
Absolutely. I think being on time, I've always kind of taken the route of 15 minutes early is late. Like, you want to be there prior. On time is not on time. And I think that shows your discipline of what you're willing to do for that. If you're willing to show up early and take that extra step, I think it shows a lot to your character of what you're trying to accomplish with your craft. And it is something that is overlooked a lot. And I've been late as much as anybody has been, but I pride myself on the fact that I take that very seriously, that 99% of the time I'm going to be there 15 minutes early.
Sometimes I often talk with John or whomever about how, back in the early days of recording, 60s, 70s, 80s, you could become a record producer just by, if you were a phone man or a janitor or a runner.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, how did the janitor become a hit producer? And I think it's because he was there.
Yeah.
Right? It's like someone didn't show, someone maybe even was sick, but they didn't show, so they needed an engineer, and this guy's been around, so they pulled him on as an engineer, and eventually, he's making hit records, because I've heard about it. There's some guy from Sunset Sound.
Mm-hmm.
Don't know his name, but I just know that used to happen. And so much of it is just being there.
Just being there.
And absorbing, learning. So I think that's a huge skill that often gets overlooked. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I know we're on a little tangent here.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
I think, that's
it's
a big part about being a professional here. You need to be there. You need to communicate your wants and needs.
Yep.
Things like that.
And have pro gear too. That is another thing that kind of goes with that, like showing up on time and having the gear, having pro level cymbals, snares, or your bass, your pedal board, your guitar. Like, it's just an elevation thing that I think is important for a professional musician of a standard to keep for themselves.
Setup time is huge too.
Mm-hmm.
when I was getting into pedals as a younger teen, right, I had this pedal chain that looked absurd. And eventually I'm like, you know what? I need a pedal board because I need to sit down, plug in, and go. I can't be finagling all these things.
Yeah, man, you make it a spaceship.
Yeah, exactly. And then I had a spaceship for a long time. And thankfully we have a ramp here. It was very nice that I could wheel in my pedal board and, you know.
Nice.
So I'm sorry to digress with a lot of that, but, you know, going to college, you kind of started to learn some of this professionalism from your professor there. And then, you know, how did you then, like, what was your next path once you were graduating?
So, honestly, it kind of happened all at once, and it was actually when I was still in college. So I had a longtime friend that I grew up with named Nate Lapierre, who started a project called Lapierre. And he was a little older than me. He was about 5 or 6 years older than me. He went to Hillsong University in Australia to become a worship leader. And so he came home from that, and he kind of wanted to start his own music and not do the worship thing as much. So he launched his career as an artist, and kind of right out of high school, I started playing with him amongst a couple of other bands. And so I toured with him for a couple of years, kind of when I was still in college. And a really amazing thing about my school was if you got a touring opportunity, they would let you do everything online, because that's literally what you're trying to do with that degree, is to get a touring gig or to get some sort of professional gig. So if you're doing that, they want to incentivize that to happen.
Yeah, that's super cool. I never heard that.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I've met a lot of people that went to Dime, but that's just never come up. But that's really, really cool of them. So you were on tour and you were doing your classwork.
Yeah,
that's
a lot of it.
Of you.
Yeah. Oh man, it was a couple trying years for sure, of a lot of work, and you know, being in the van after the show, writing essays and making, you know, pulling up the Guitar Center in between shows to record myself for a something I had to turn in for a lesson, or setting up before sound check and playing something that I'd had to record. So it was a process, but through that, like, kind of getting that start, I guess it was the second year I was in college, more touring opportunities kind of came through that, and meeting people at the college. And one of the people that we want to talk about, or we were talking about before, was a band called Brother Elsey, who I've played for a long time, who are like brothers to me. I love the music we make, and we met freshman year of college at orientation. Just right away, like, I was the only other dude with a beard and a flannel and boots, and like the three brothers from Rochester, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. You know, big, broad-shouldered, bearded dudes, and I'm the same. I'm just a little shorter, so we saw each other pretty quickly. And right after school, we hung out, and Jack came up to me, and we talked for a while, hung out after school, and that kind of started our relationship, music relationship, but just like friendship. Like I said, they're like brothers to me at this point. Like we've been playing with each other for 10 years through different iterations of the band. It was called Fifth and Main at the beginning, and then kind of post-college, it turned into Brother Elsey. And that's kind of been the gig for the last 5 years, playing with them.
So that's a great transition. Why don't we get into our first song here?
Sure.
And we can talk about what we're hearing, and you can tell us, you know, your process with Brother Elsey and how this song came about. So this is called Babylon, right?
Yep.
It's on the self-titled album. Came out in January. First album, right, for the band?
Yes, first LP, self-titled.
Very cool. Congratulations.
We worked on this record with a producer named Drew Long out of Nashville. Great dude, great producer, did a really great job on the production with this record. But I kind of had this like shuffle thing, because anyone who knows me, especially my drummer buddies, they know I love shuffles. Just the purdy, like, just having that triplet going, and I've just obsessed over it over the years, Rosanna, all that. So I kind of wanted to incorporate that into this song, and I had a different part made. I was doing kind of on the rim of the drum. But I talked with the producer about it, and he's like, I feel like there's a better way we can come out with that sound in this song, but with a different approach. And so we started talking about it. And so I ended up getting my cajon out, and I took wire brushes.
Oh, a hairbrush.
Well, there's
Sick.
different brushes. There's a wire brush. This is a plastic cajon brush. There's hay brushes.
Okay.
And each kind of give you a little bit different of a tone thing. Metal versus plastic versus hay. It just gives you a little bit different texture.
So this kind of goes back to our professionalism thing here, right? If you're a drummer and you're showing up to a studio, maybe you're not bringing your own kit, but you have your versatile tools in your bag there, right? Because you don't know exactly what the song is going to drive as far as sounds.
Yeah, absolutely. I think before you even get to the drums and the cymbals, I think the most important thing is the tool, the first tool. And the first tool is either the stick or the brush or the mallet or whatever you're choosing to strike the drum with is going to give you all the tonation of what that's going to be. Because I could hit this snare with a stick or I could hit it with a brush. Different textures. So it's the first thing I always think about when I'm going into a session of like, what's the vibe? What's the texture I'm looking for? What's the sound? Scape kind of. And I just played that on a cajon. So with a brush, it would sound more like, right? Cool. So this like triplet pattern brush thing. And then what he did was he reversed it. And he took it in 4 measure segments and just threw it out the entire song. So it actually like really freed up my hands to be able to play a different pattern, which if you want to play it now, you'll see later in the song, it kind of comes in a different way where it's not as shuffly. It's kind of more straight.
Well, cool. So let's start again off the top. We heard a little bit of the brush and then the song is kind of like slowly building, right?
Yeah.
Great. Here we are. This is Babylon by Brother Elsey on their latest record that came out in January of this year.
So in this track, this going on is actually a brush, so I can't play it.
Learned it from the movie screens. Taking points
Mallet.
from LA's best to find the love we need. Both liars in our own
And the snare's off.
We're half asleep and walking through the moonlight, and that's alright. They'll put it in the paper. Yeah, read all about it. 10 reasons to hate your neighbor. We're walking lines that we can't see. Yeah, they ain't our story about 2 kids in a tragedy. Somewhere along this old road to Babylon, you're gonna lose your mind.
So we lost the brush.
Still got the mallet. And soon I'm going to turn the snare on. Full kit in. So kind of bring in the kit later in the song, like that.
It's a really fun song, the way you kind of build there.
Thanks, man.
Strangers in an old and sacred song.
So this is a part when I actually go back to the original pattern that I wrote. So back to the snare off, brushes back in, and it's that kind of through the end of song. So,
well, I like that. I'm gonna let it go. I like those little delay ear candy there.
Oh yeah, that's Jack Stavlin on guitar.
Is that the producer you said?
No, that's the guitar player in Brother Elsey, Jack Stavlin. It's got a big washy kind of tone.
Yeah, that's an awesome song. I really like it. It was actually kind of fun hearing the brush story before going in, because if you would have done that shuffle off the top, the song would have been so different.
Way different. And it was when we first started writing the song, we played it out for, we toured with it for a couple years before we finally recorded it, and we knew it was a special song, and we wanted to give it the justice that it deserved with the production. Because the band, like how we start writing songs has always been very garage band. Like Brady writes a song, he's the lead singer, brings it to me and his brothers, Beau and Jack, and we all kind of just sit in a circle and start writing parts. And we've kind of always done it that way. And then as we go into a studio, working with the producer, he'll have ideas and we'll change stuff. Sometimes dramatic changes, sometimes little changes, but it's always started for us just in the rehearsal space and in the four of us just getting on instruments and writing out parts. And that song specifically, like I said, we played for a couple years before it came to its final form, which a lot of songs, it takes time. I think, we're in a modern age where a lot of songs are done in studio first and then they're taken live. And sometimes there can be a little bit of a miscommunication between those two processes, where I love hearing a song out and playing a song out with an artist or a band first and then going to record it, because there's people always being like, hey, when is that song coming out? And we're like, oh, well, we're still working on it. And they're like, but we want to hear it. I think that's a part of the process that, isn't as common anymore. It's not that it's lost, but yeah.
I think it is definitely one of those conversations that we've had here too, where you get somebody who's writing some songs and they want to fill it out. We help them do that here. But there is something so magical about playing a song for a group and seeing the reaction, and then you can really get a very quick idea if people like that song.
Sure.
Because
tweaks that need to be done.
Yeah. If you're playing it out and people are loving it, then it's working. If they're ignoring you and they're talking to their friend, or at the bar, maybe it needs a little bit more love, or maybe you're in the wrong venue. I'll give you that. Right? But it is such a beautiful thing that, it's not to get on the tangent of modern technology and all that stuff. Yes, you can do a lot of things on your own and you don't need a label, whereas you did before, and you'd be playing songs out at a bar to get picked up by a label and all that, right? Oh yeah. We're past that, right? I think just about this tune, just to wrap up, the way I wanted to kind of put it is the song seemed very anthem oriented, especially listening through and how we had the brush kind of start and a slow kind of draw with the snare wires open and kick drum. It kind of is building really nicely, and especially where the drum beat comes in, that backbeat is really cool. and then later bringing in that cool shuffle, which I think it's great to hear the story and then listen through, because if you would have had that shuffle off the top, it would have been dramatically different. So
Absolutely.
how are you making that brush sound live in the beginning? Are you doing something specific?
Now I kind of have a hybrid of it because I can't play the brush live. Like, I just don't have that many limbs. And that's, as a drummer, I'm a very percussive player. I love playing with shakers and tambourines and using weird mallets and slapping it with my hands and, doing different things. But you only have so many limbs, so you kind of got to sacrifice something here and there. And so I have the wire brush in a backing track. So that's going on in the back. But to also make it a little bit more cool live and add another sound on top, I do on the rims. So very quiet.
Right off the top.
Right off the top. And then I come in with that. So it adds a different layer that's not in the recording.
It makes sense for a live because at least the sticks add some of that energy.
Yeah, I tried it without it and it seemed a bit empty. So I wanted to add that back in live. It's a big harmony song for the boys. They sing 3-part harmonies. The anthem of it, I think, is the most important part. Like, the drum part really isn't like that important to the song because I'm really just chilling in the pocket. Like,
yeah. Which is great. I mean, sometimes that's what you need.
Absolutely. I think simplicity is, if you're overcomplicating it, it's because you didn't simplify it. It needs to be simple. And with a song like that, that's anthemy to get people to sing along. The boots and cats is always the way to go.
Yeah, I think it sounds great. I love it. I love the sound, sitting here listening to it, hearing you play through. So that's great. Anything else you want to touch on this tune or any of the other Brother Elsey tunes?
I mean, the boys just released the debut LP on January 30th. Yeah, I mean, we're going to be playing some shows this year, so anybody that's listening to this, please come see Brother Elsey. I am biased because I play with them, but they're a great band.
Well, thank you. Thanks for talking through that tune. We're going to get into the next tune here. So this is called, the artist is Adventures with Vultures. That's correct?
That is correct. It's a friend of mine from college. His name's Matt Sauter. He's probably not listening to this, but maybe one day he will. He's a football coach now, which is actually pretty dope.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He started with like middle school kids, and it was like a fun thing for him. And then he like found out he's really good at it, and now he's at a big high school, and who knows, maybe we'll see him coaching the Lions after Dan Campbell wins his Super Bowl. But yeah, so I started playing with Matt in college, and we just vibed right away. He's got a very rootsy sound to his music, and like I said, the way I play is very percussive, very I got my tambourine on my hi-hat over here. I'm gonna have a shaker in my right hand. I got brushes. We got along right away, and he threw me in the studio. We cut this song at Temper Mill Studio in Royal Oak. And also, brief on the Brother Elsey stuff, we cut that record at Ivy Hall in East Nashville.
The new one, correct? The self-titled
The new one,
album.
yeah. The self-title was in Nashville. But yeah, Matt and I we cooked this up with a great band. Elise McCoy was on guitar. His brother Danny was on bass. I think we had a couple other like overdubbed instruments, but that was the basis of the band, produced by Kevin Nixon.
Is Kevin Nixon a house engineer there, a producer, or did you bring him in?
No, Kevin was actually, he was the head of the school at Dime.
Oh, okay,
and so
cool.
Dime had a label that they were using with artists from the school. And so Matt was with that label. And so Kevin was I think still is. I haven't seen Kevin in a while, but he was a producer, big time producer over in the UK for a long time, and writer, co-writer, had some pretty high hit songs, and yeah, he produced this track for the band.
Very cool. Thank you. Yeah, I know Temper Mill has house engineers and house producers that you can add on. So I wasn't familiar with his name. So Adventures with Vultures. This song is called Poor Boy. Correct. Is there anything you want to give us off the top, or just go ahead?
Yeah, we can just get into it. You got to remember all these parts.
Well, as a poor boy came home, took his shoes up on the front porch and laid low. Took his things out to the backyard and bare feet. Didn't care about the rocks on the concrete. Knowing he said one day you'll find out that life here ain't no fun. Well, as he headed to the backwoods, took some whiskey and he rolled up the backwood. Dipped his feet inside that holy water, and he looked up to the sky, said, Father, oh, would you please let me in, 'cause his life up and the rain came down. Said I don't care about what they say, please don't take that love away no more. Into the woods came a girl in a white dress. Said her husband didn't show up to the wedding, and she wondered what a handsome man like me was doing all alone. Oh, and I said, cutie pie, well, don't you try and show me no love. And she said, oh boy, don't try to act like I have known you your whole life. Plus your father told me come down here and make sure you're doing up and down. Oh, and then she smiled fast as she passed me this black guitar. And then the sky opened up and the rain came down. Said I don't care about what they say, please don't take that love away, no, 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 please don't take that love away, oh, well, that poor boy, that's me, and life ain't so damn easy, you can ask me. Plus you gotta know that life's gonna stay hard. Drink a lot and go and buy you that sports car. Or you can find something that you love and stay away from guns. And then the sky opened up and the rain came down. Said I don't care about what they say, please don't take that love away no more. No more. Please don't take that love away no more. Please don't take that love away no more.
A lot of energy in that one.
Yeah, man.
It seems like that style of music, it was calling for that drum beat.
Definitely that train beat. Kind of, Matt kind of sits somewhere between Americana, country, and bluegrass. Real rootsy, but with a kind of gritty sound to it too. A lot of the tunes he writes is kind of in that vein. So, the approach to go would be the classic Johnny Cash country thing. But at the beginning, I kind of wanted to play on this like double time, halftime thing with the floor tom. So you got the full time, the 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So you got that going on. The shaker is kind of in the middle, just giving some 16th note. And so the floor tom adds this half beat. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So you're kind of getting two different feels at the same time. And then that chorus kind of opens up. That's where I do the kind of Johnny Cash snare train beat kind of thing, because it's like, it's the chorus, you got to open it up at some point.
Yeah, as soon as you started going with that, I started thinking that drummers are the hardest working people out there. I mean, you're loading in 10 times more gear than the rest of us, and then you're working out every time. There's no other excuse. Everybody out there, feed your drummers. They need fuel to keep moving.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also give them the credit, right? Because they're holding the band down. The better the drummer, the better the band. That's my thought.
I didn't think about that when I first started picking up drums. I was like, oh, this is fun. I didn't think about 10 years later, I'm going to be hauling all this gear everywhere and no one wants to help me move it. And you know what I mean?
Now we're going to go a little bit into the business where we're going to talk about sessions, about pricing, about splits on royalties with people, touring, gigging. So kind of get into that. Are you touring right now? Any gigs coming up that you're excited about or that you have going on this year?
Yeah, man. Currently, I'm playing a lot of gigs with this guy named Paul McDonald. He's out of Nashville. Met Paul probably about a month ago, 2 months ago. Needed a drummer for some gigs kind of as a fill-in situation, and then turns out he needed somebody for more of the year. So yeah, I'm going to be on the road with him. He's releasing a new record. He's actually releasing his first single from the new record this Friday, but he's got a new record coming out in actually, I'm not going to say because it's for him to say, but I'll be playing with him over the next
catch.
Yeah, right. It was right at the last moment.
A great catch there.
Yeah, I'll be on the road with him quite a bit the next 3 months or so. I got some dates with Brother Elsey coming up at some point soon, but I'm not going to say when because, again, it's not my information to release.
Yeah. all those NDAs out there.
Yeah, man. You know, you got to be careful. You don't want to spill the beans, you know?
I don't know if I want to ask this or not. This could be a tough one. If you take a drumming gig and then your number one maybe is Elsey, I don't know, you can tell me, says, hey, actually, we're going to play. Mm-hmm. Do you have to back out?
Depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've always been a believer that when you get booked for something, you get booked for something. So say the boys are taking some time off, have a show pop up last minute and I'm on the road, I would call my number one drummer who, I mean, especially being in Nashville, like I got 15 guys that I could call that are going to do an amazing job on the drums and cover me. But yeah, Brother Elsey has always been kind of the number one that I've played for over the years, and it changes because their schedule changes. You know, sometimes they're on the road more than other times, and so I try to manage a balance in between what makes sense too. You know, with where I'm at and what I'm doing too. So it's kind of a situational thing a lot of times.
Yeah, and typically you're knowing, you know, months in advance what the plan is for the year, I would assume.
Yeah, usually at least a month in advance.
Yeah, because everybody is kind of on that release schedule. You know you got music coming out, you know you're going to hit the road, or you know you're going to sit at home and write some tunes or go recording. So presumably, you know, unless, of course, you get offered a gig, which I'm sure happens sometimes. And
one of my favorite things about being a session player is being able to play with all these different musicians, all these different artists, all these different bass players, guitar players, pianists, whatever. You know, there are a plethora of artists that I play with, especially in Nashville. But you can also spread yourself too thin sometimes. And so with that, you know, if I get a call for a gig that I can't make in town, I'm going to send them my best recommendation. Usually 3 drummers in town that I know are going to do a great job.
So if somebody reaches out to you and you are free, do you have like a go-to rate that you typically are using for maybe a gig or for sessions? Or how does that work for you if you want to divulge that information?
Yeah, it's I won't get into specific numbers, but I'll definitely give you kind of a overview of how I look at it. So with gigs, I've always, there's different levels to it, right? Gigs, studio sessions, tours. So there's kind of that beginning level of you're trying to get your feet wet, you're trying to meet people, you're trying to network, you're trying to make your name known kind of around. Then there's that next kind of intermediate level of like, you got a couple gigs, you go on the road a good amount, and then there's your salary gigs, big paying artists, whether it's even an artist you're going into the studio for that is signed to a label. That's kind of at a different price level. So I base a lot of what I do off of A, the situation, and B, what I need to make it happen. So I will tell you straight up, I will not leave the house for under $100. If it's a gig in town, if it's 30 minutes, if it's one song, if it's anything, I'm not leaving for under that. And so everybody needs to have a number, I think, as a session player that you're not willing to go under. And then from there, like I think about a lot of it as a time thing. How much time am I going to be giving to this? How many hours am I going to be in the session for? Can I make another session at the end of the day, or is this going to be an 8-hour thing? Am I traveling to the gig? Is per diem involved? Is this tour a week long, or is it 3 days long? It's a time commitment thing for me, and I've always thought musicians have a tough time with this stuff because we're all such like emotional people. Like we love what we do so much, you know, and we're willing to compromise a lot of that to make it happen, to be on stage, to get that opportunity. And there's times for that in your career for sure, when you're getting your feet wet, trying to meet people, you're trying to network. But I think there's a point you need, it's a self-reflective place that you get to where like, okay, this is where I'm at. And if you're truly honest with where you're at, your skill level and the level that you're playing at with other people, it kind of naturally happens. And I've always thought about the fact that like if you're going to hire a plumber to come and fix your toilet or your sink that broke, you're going to pay him $60 to $90 an hour to $100 an hour. That's what that trade is worth. So if you think about it in that way, like I need to get this amount an hour just because it's music, it's still a trade. You're still a drummer, you're still a bass player, you're still a guitar player. You have a trade to offer a service to somebody. And so if you think about it that way and kind of where your level is and be honest with yourself about that, you can come to a good amount of money that leads up to what the time is that you're putting in.
You know, it sounds like that is kind of common with people, you know, ourselves included and people we talk to. It's all situation based. And,
you
know, there's a lot of factors that come into play when deciding whether to take a gig or not. You know, if you've read that book by Ari Herstand, How to Make It in the New Music Business, he uses a cool scale that I've kind of remembered that's...
Oh, cool. What is it?
You rate a gig with 3 factors: how fun it is, how much money it is, and what's the exposure.
Mm-hmm.
And you rate each thing out of 10, and you never take a gig under a 15 total. So if you get 5s across the board, okay, 15, maybe I don't remember if it's equal to 15 or below,
I
but
got you.
it can actually help you decide, right? If it's really good exposure, but there's no pay, then, if it's a ton of fun, right? That's where you're kind of floating between. So
Definitely. And yeah, I love that. I think that's a great scale. I think everybody's trying to, we were talking about this in our initial phone call, talking about this interview of like, we're both trying to figure it out actively of like how that works. And it's different for everybody. Everybody finds their own balance and scale with it, I think in that way.
it is, because time is of the essence too, right? If you're booked for 2 weeks straight, but then somebody else is like, hey, I really want a day, and you maybe have the day, maybe the rate goes up a little bit.
Absolutely.
It's hard to say because it's you never know exactly, but
Yeah.
it's all based on a lot of factors and how busy you are. So,
and you got to be competitive with it too. Like if I was talking to my younger self, I would tell him to be able to say no more. Be able to say, no, I can't make it for that gig, or I can't do it for that price. It's all learning. You learn through those experiences, but if you're, you get a session booked, you're getting paid $75. You go to the studio, you buy lunch, $20. You sit there and say, the artist isn't buying. You buy dinner, that's $40. All right, let's go have a couple drinks after the studio session. That's $25.
yep.
You just came home with $10. You know what I mean? It's like you gotta equate all that stuff into what you're doing.
Yes, and I think that's huge, because I think I've heard of people say with touring, and I don't remember where I heard this, like as long as you're making a certain amount per day that is going to offset your food, your gas, your expenses, maybe hotel, then you can at least know you're coming out positive. Does that come in play with you at all, like on the road?
Somewhat. I think as a working class musician, a thing that a lot of people should get used to is packing your lunch. Sure. And taking snacks with you on the road. If you don't really want to spend the kind of money on the road, there's ways to get around that. But specifically, like I usually don't take gigs on the road that don't have per diem.
So you just know it's baked in.
Gotta have it. If I'm going to come and work for you, you got to be able to compensate for the things that I need during and that includes like hospitality, getting a hotel room, not my own hotel room, but at least somewhere to sleep, not having to pay gas. It's different if you're in a band or you are an artist. You're taking the sacrifice to do that stuff, but you have to pay the people who are working for you. It's not their sacrifice.
Yes, I think that's a really great way to put it too. If you are the artist and you're hiring people to come out with you, for you, then you need to be paying them for the practice time, the session time, the rehearsals, and then compensating them on the road.
Yep.
Right? If they're part of the band, it's kind of a different energy because they are contributing to that as a whole.
Absolutely.
But if you're a hired gun on the road for, whomever, it's a different vibe. So it's cool that you actually brought that up. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and especially if an artist wants to keep a band around, if they want to keep certain people involved, even on a smaller level of like, hey, I can give you $10 for the day. I can give you $5 for rehearsal. I can get, whatever it is. It's like showing that effort to your players makes them want to stay involved. And I can say that firsthand.
It makes sense too. I'm happy you brought it up because if you're on the road with a person that you didn't play on the record, so you got no back end royalties on it. So they're out there, they're slinging merch, they're selling albums and they're getting streams or whatever, but you're catching none of that. You're just there burning calories and moving gear, right? So that's a huge part. You have to be able to be making money on that as well.
Yep.
Because they're, sure, they're making money off the top, but they're also making it on the back end by promoting themselves as the artist.
Totally.
And being the artist.
It's also dependent on what you're trying to do too. A lot of people have proper jobs that support them and they really just want to have the experience of going on the road or being involved in a studio session or whatever. And then there's people who are trying to do it for a living. I think there's a distinctive difference between what that means for that person.
So I don't know if you want to touch on anything else or we can get into your new role of production.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
So production is a relatively new thing for you. I've been doing it a while.
Yes and no. So Officially, I've produced tracks for artists over probably the last 3 or 4 years. And that's really when I kind of got to the place where I'm like, I want to do this. Like, I want to work with artists and in the studio as other than just a drummer. Drummers a lot of times can make pretty decent producers because they think about everything else they're thinking about what they're playing, but they're setting everything else up in the song. You're transitioning spots. You're thinking about measures. You're thinking about structure. You're thinking about all these specific things to a song that make a song. It's almost like a drummer is somewhat of a producer in a song because they're laying down a foundation for the rest of the song.
Because you're creating the energy immediately.
Yep, dynamic.
You could come in playing a blast beat off the top and just ruin the song.
Yeah, that would make Babylon a lot different of a song if I put a blast beat on it,
Exactly. So I think that's a really good point because you are producing yourself, first of all, based on the song and trying to figure out how to make it the best song it can be.
Yeah.
And vamp the right way depending on the energy that the band wants to convey.
Definitely, and that every drummer is different in how they do that and build that dynamic. But a lot of the groups that I'd play with over the years prior to me actually officially like taking producer gigs, I would very much be doing that with the band. I'm always, anybody who knows or I've played with or been in a band with knows that I'm not afraid to throw my opinion out there about a structure or something to go with the song. And it's always a collaborative, like it's never like anyone's getting upset about anything, but I'm just a person who will throw out my idea. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, I'm cool with that too. Like it really has never made a difference to me because we're collaborating. I was doing that already with a lot of groups I was playing with without officially being a producer.
Yeah, and you were getting practice too.
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it. You
Definitely.
were kind of like exercising your ideas, seeing which stuck, seeing how you want to approach. Producing music is as much as producing people, if not more. It's just the production of people and like people's ideas and egos, right? Everybody has like their trip that they're trying to convey.
Definitely.
And finding a way around that and to help convey it.
Absolutely. I think that for me, it was always about the people. It was always about getting takes out of people. And again, like growing up being around music a lot, Walt Wilkins is one guy that sticks out to me. And as a producer, like I would see my dad working with him or he'd be producing other artists and he was always very much a coach. Like he was like kind of doing it in this way where he wasn't sitting down and like playing a guitar part or a bass part or a piano part, or he was coaching the player and being like, hey, like, what do you think about trying this? It gives it kind of more of a vibe like this, or talking about structure. And I've kind of always been more of that in a band setting anyways. So, I mean, I play a little bit of guitar. I can play some chords, and same with bass or piano, just, very basic standard. But I'm not a player in any means on those instruments. I love the connection that I get to have with the players because I'm thinking about arrangement. I'm thinking about the entire composition, how the vocals are being phrased, how the vocal tone is, what the delivery is, like all these little tiny things with every instrument. I love it's like Legos coming together to make a Lego set. I've always thought of it that way. Yeah, I love working with people in that respect. So that's kind of more my style. You'll rarely see me actually get on the console and touch Pro Tools because it kind of scares me.
Yeah. There's a lot there. It sounds like from what you've talked about, a big part of this is community, being with people, coaching, getting good takes. And it's often one of those things that I don't think the general public music fans understand all that well on how much a producer can change the sound of a song, right? I think it's so cool sometimes to listen back to a demo after we've finished a song and be like, wow, these are so different. I think sometimes I'm like, man, I wish people could hear the demo side by side to understand what the value of that producer is. And sometimes the opposite, right? You hear of a lot of bands scrapping albums because it just didn't work. Yeah. And it never made sense to me before, but it does now, right? You put a lot of time and energy, and then it's just not, if it's not right, it's not right. And you have to, be mature adults and say, we got to start over.
Yeah, I've always said the song should have the biggest ego in the room. So anybody who thinks something really, really needs to happen, but the rest of everybody else isn't agreeing with that, it most likely isn't the right thing because the song is the most important thing, not someone's specific part. And it, like you said, if people could listen sometimes in some way to it, and I think that's why demos, when they get released post a song being released, it is such a popular thing.
Yes, it's a lot of decision making along the process because you are deciding, your direction continuously.
Yeah.
So, well, cool. Let's hear a song that you produced by Jonathan Pantele.
Yeah. Yep.
Pantele. So this is called Caroline. If you want to give a little synopsis, and we can get it going.
Yeah, man. Shout out to a couple players on this. One of my best friends in the world, co-writer, co-lifer, Jefferson Rink, was on bass, and he was on lap steel guitar, and I believe he also did a guitar track. Jonathan played the main electric guitar, which we were kind of, before we get into it, we were kind of going for this like rustic, tremolo heavy, beat up, gritty guitar. And so he had this Epiphone.
Sounds cool.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. He had this Epiphone, semi-hollow body Epiphone that we ran through an amp, and I think we put a mic like way in the back of the room. So you're catching all this reverb. And we recorded it at Big Sky Recording Studio in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Jeff Michael was the engineer working on it. And we had kind of a small team working on this record with Jonathan. I met Jonathan through the grapevine, through the scene, the music scene, and he wanted to do a record, and we started talking more, and he's like, yeah, come produce, some tracks. And so we started. This was the first song that he brought to me, and immediately hearing the demo of it, his voice is just like really powerful, really like, it's got this kind of raspy, like loves Dave Matthews kind of sounding voice, really 90s. But yeah, we kind of went for like a Rust Belt kind of Americana thing on this song.
Excellent. So you were co-producing this with Jonathan then?
No, I was producing this. He was the artist. He played acoustic and he played the tremolo guitar as well.
Okay, cool. So he was a songwriter.
Songwriter, artist, singer, and yeah, he's awesome. I actually just worked with him on Tuesday on some new tracks. So.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
Great. So let's hear this song called Caroline by Jonathan Pantele.
It's a J45 acoustic guitar for all you nerds.
That's a good one.
Caroline,
Oh,
I hear you talking.
definitely has a deep
I
voice.
hear you walking out the front door to the road.
A nice timbre.
Caroline,
Yeah, man.
I hear you
A real
sing,
lonesome guitar,
and I hear you screaming from a broken heart of gold. Why can't you see it's not me that you're gonna leave on your back burner, not in this lifetime.
So you're not the mixing engineer on this, right?
Nope. Jeff Michael.
That's nice. You could just leave.
Yeah. It's great. That's how I want it.
Caroline.
So that lap steel is Jefferson Rink.
Caroline.
I was just kind of wanting to groove on this one.
Used to kiss me on the front porch in the rain.
The drumming is nice there when he starts to get loud too.
Totally. Bringing the band in later.
Yeah.
It's lonesome, but like strong.
Yeah, I like often when the music energy matches that vocal energy.
Yeah.
That you're gonna leave on your back burner, not in this lifetime. Even when I know you're right, sometimes a lot of think about how much you're wrong. But look at what we've done, staring at the sun, Caroline.
Big Sky Recording also gets some really good sounds. They're a cool studio in Ann Arbor.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. That's where you were the other day when that was that picture with Takashi.
Yeah, with Takashi.
Yeah.
He was awesome.
About how much you're wrong. But look at what we've done. Look at what we've done. Even when I know you're right, sometimes a lot of think about how much.
So coming up, he's gonna repeat the hook.
But look how
And that's like one of those producer things you think about. Far we've come.
It's only just begun. Caroline.
Think about those repetitive hooks, or making a shortening a pre-chorus, or lengthening here or there, cutting fat, you know. That was just one example.
Very cool. I'm sitting here looking here. It says the composer, Jonathan Nicholas Kyriakos Pantele. Got a little Greek in you there, Jonathan. Good man. Fellow Greek here. It's cool that I see that as a composer. I mean, I'm just looking at the credits here.
Yeah.
I think that's cool. So, great song. I think it's a lot of fun, kind of up and down there. So he's kind of starting on his own. You guys kind of bring in, you got a lot of highs, and then he kind of comes out on his own as well.
Definitely.
You know, how much of that did you bring into the table? Like, was that structure kind of ironed out, or did you help shorten things up, lengthen anything up?
Yeah, it kind of started with Jonathan bringing just an acoustic track with him. I think a couple of the sections in the verse were a little bit longer. We kind of cut the fat on some of the stuff. What I've always said with him was getting to the point. Get to the point, especially in the chorus, of what you're trying to say lyrically to get your idea there. He shared with this on his social media, so I feel comfortable saying this. It was about a friend of his that dealt with addiction for a long time. You know, we were trying to kind of bring in that effect of like the lonesomeness with the guitar tone, you know, of like a real just like kind of lazy, tremolo-y electric guitar coming in with a little bit of acoustic, and then like a big anthemic kind of sounding tune as well. It's not like super repetitive, but the lap steel kind of adds some tension. I first laid down the drum track, so we jammed through it, him and I, and we got a track down between drums and acoustic, and then we kind of started building after that. We had Jefferson come in, and he's a multi-instrumentalist. He added a bass part, so we kind of got a rhythm section going, got a groove in there, and then John added some more Jeff played some electric guitar on it, and then we're like, man, like we're missing something. We need some like sass in this. We need some grit, some more grit, some strong grit, because that tremolo guitar is nice. It's gritty. It's lonesome, but it's not powerful too. Like, what can we add that's powerful? And another thing, just to go off of that, I think using descriptive words in a studio of how it's trying to make you feel is a huge thing to communicate what you're saying to the other players.
Yes, definitely. Describing music is one of those things that is very difficult, or can be very difficult, but different people have different ways of using the same word sometimes. So making sure
absolutely.
You're on the same page. If somebody's like, oh yeah, that's whatever. Sometimes I end up making up words on the spot, so that's not always helpful, but I have to describe what that might mean.
Give it a little Scrooty-Loo, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Like it needs a little zippy
For some reason, I've gone with like, I just got to goose it up.
Yeah, I love that.
Goose it up. And we did a session, like a weekend session with a band, and by the time we were, done, everything was goosed up. You know? 'Cause
Nice.
at first, like, what the hell are you
I love
saying?
that. I'm going to use that.
Like, turn it up, man.
We gotta
Turn that
goose it up.
Just goose it up.
Yeah.
I have no idea where it came from.
That's great.
My favorite one might be milky. We used to make those vocals more milky.
More milky. I love that.
It just
Yeah,
sounds
I mean,
gross.
you need those types of words to portray as, I'm speaking from someone who would be an artist. Like, artists and people who are, like, you're trying to communicate to your players what you want. Use the weirdest, most descriptive words. Give us colors and give us nouns and adjectives and everything that you can do to kind of portray that. Because I think that's a big part of like I kept saying lonesome. Like, we wanted a lonesome guitar. That's why we put a mic in the back of the room to make it sound like it's like so far away from each other. To segue into that, what we needed was some power. We needed some sass. That's when we added the lap steel in. And Jeff, he plays a little bit, but this was kind of the first time he really was like put lap steel on a track. And yeah, he just kind of threw some stuff on there. We ended up just throwing it on the whole song, and it was a big part in it. So
yeah, that makes sense, because obviously with reverb, or distance from something, it's not gonna have as much punch. So having something else that can kind of take up the space that was not using, right?
Definitely. And honestly, there's not a lot of tracks on that song. Like, I think it's really important a lot of times to get a really great initial sound. Like, do it the right way, do it the long way, take the time to do it, find the actual take that you're trying to get instead of, I think nowadays especially too, maybe it's because I don't really like working on Pro Tools and stuff, but like if you take the time to do that, you don't have to do as much in post. Like you don't have to go and add a bunch of plugins, and yes, there's plenty of times where those come into effect in a great way. It depends on the type of music you're making as well. But if you're trying to make rootsy Americana, country, rock, you want raw. That's what those rootsy genres are about. It's the raw emotion of it. I think there might be 12 instrument tracks on that song, and most of them are the drums, So, yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, so knowing what your end goal is.
Yep, and having a great engineer in my situation.
Yeah, I think that's actually a question that we ask a lot here when there are prospective clients. We say, what do you want to sound like? If you're going to send us, you want to sound like Justin Bieber's album, which I shouldn't even say because I don't know what those sound like. But if you want to sound like that, but your influences are something else, it's like we got to see where we want to go. So I think for us, we often ask, who are your top 3 favorite things as far as like sound wise you want to achieve?
Huge,
because it kind of helps like guidance, because we could take it in any direction necessarily if we wanted to. But I need to think of a better example. Like if you want to sound like Phoebe Bridgers, or if you want to sound like, whatever, Boy Genius or the Lumineers or the Rolling Stones, it's like finding some sort of guidepost, because we're not going to really end up there necessarily, but it's going to help us make a decision to not go with something or to go with something else. Right?
Absolutely. It gives you a tonal reference too.
Because I think, sometimes artists don't understand like the sound quality of production, but if they want like a garagey sound, that's really raw, like not very highly produced or mixed. That's different than if they want something super highly produced, where it's very clean and there's all the, like everything is perfectly recorded. That's a different vibe.
Oh, big time.
So knowing, the expectation is huge. How about you tell me about Bleau Otis?
Yeah, so Bleau Otis is a artist I've been working with for, I've known Bleau about 4 or 5 years now, but we really have started to work on stuff in the last 3 years, 2 or 3 years. Okay. Artist out of Flint, Michigan, hasn't released any music yet, so all who are listening to this are going to hear a unreleased version of one of his songs, which I okayed with him. He said it was all good.
Oh, very cool.
Had to make sure that was good with him first. But
so did he reach out to you? Or did you know him for a while?
No, man. So we played in a band. We still technically play in a band together, a band called the Midwest Riders, who is a collective of a bunch of different dudes, started by a guy named Billy Gunther, who I've played with for about 8 or 9 years on and off here and there. But he and I are kind of lifer musicians together. We always are collaborating, and Billy actually co-produced this song with me for Bleau. All of the songs that Bleau is going to be releasing, Billy and I have co-produced together. We just kind of have a really great relationship and can go off on one another really well. He kind of just came in. He sat in one day with us. We were playing some gigs around Bay City, Saginaw, Flint area, just doing like some bar gig stuff, and met Bleau. He came up, started playing, and man, he's just got a really raw talent. He's got a really killer voice. It's always kind of reminded me of Stevie Wonder, Alan Stone. He's got that vibrato, the high pitch he can get to too. But man, he is a really intuitive guitar player. He's got a line of blues in his blood with his family line. He's just he grew up around music. his dad plays, and he just sat in one day. We started playing. He started to become a regular, and then we started to work on some his music, and he started showing us some writings he had. And that's kind of where we went from there. We recorded this song that you're going to hear is called Friends. We recorded it at my friend Ricky Ford's basement studio that has now turned into a full-blown studio that he has at the house, all the gear and everything. It's been really cool to see Rick progress through with that. But Ricky Ford on bass, Bleau is on lead guitar, Billy Gunther on acoustic guitar, I'm on drums. I think Kevin Rouse has a track or two of guitar in there as well. I think this is going to be the first single that Bleau releases. But yeah, kind of going for like this Motown-y, like 50s, 60s kind of thing. So yeah.
Can you tell everybody watching how he spells his artist name? Because it is unique.
Yeah, so it's BLEAU Otis, and then OTIS. Bleau Otis Music, Bleau Otis. He will be releasing things probably within the next 6 months. I think we got a good 6 or 7 songs done and produced and mixed, ready to send to master here soon. So
excellent. Great. Let's hear it. This is Friends by Bleau Otis.
Kind of going for that Motown thing. Drag.
Well, you lost me as a friend. Yet you know just where we sit.
That's him on lead guitar.
Yeah, wonderful voice.
No
Yeah, man.
reason to hide
Special.
all of your lies. 'Cause I can't understand how you're gone like the wind. I guess I wasn't surprised. No reason to get excited. I figured out your games.
Love the call and response.
Yeah, that's cool, right?
But it'll never be the same.
That's cool too. The ending that chorus like that.
Yeah.
That's
Bup,
very
bup,
vibe.
bup, bup. We went full Motown with this one.
Sometimes that's what you got to do.
It's true.
You can lean into it. It doesn't feel corny. It doesn't feel tried or
Yeah.
whatever, tired meaning.
It's so funny the background that you're talking about, the call and response. This is Bleau, I swear to God, just bullshitting up there. Like he was joking, and we're like, that kind of sounds good, dude. Like keep going. And so all the call and response was him just having fun, but ended up making the cut.
I think that's what's so cool. Just biggest thing is having fun. Not trying to force it too much. Just have a good time doing what you're doing.
Definitely.
And sometimes just being in that jovial kind of fun attitude, you're gonna make better music.
Yeah, man.
I like that guitar tone. It's a very Clapton guitar tone there.
Definitely.
That's nice.
Again, he is just like having fun,
This style of music, that's the point. I mean, that is part of it. You're not trying to be brooding.
Definitely, it's silly. You want to be a little silly.
Till the very end, I was the man.
Awesome.
Yeah, man.
Great tune. I think, we kind of talked through there. But I love that. I can see why you'd want to be a part of that project.
Yeah, man. Blue, he's a great guy too. I've gotten to know Blue over the last 4 or 5 years playing with him, and just got a cool story, cool dude, great artist, and that's a huge part of being involved in things that I want to involve myself in. It's just like you get inspired by people, and he's definitely one of those guys.
That's awesome. Being inspired by people, being inspired to be doing the music. It's not easy work. Mm-hmm. Producing records, producing songs, it is not easy work. It is a continued challenge. It is hard. You're making a lot of decisions, right?
A lot of patience too, man.
So much patience. You have to love it. You have to love the song, or otherwise you're just going to bang your head against the wall, right? There's been plenty of times I've left here after 12 hours.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I didn't eat, whatever, this and that. And, you're driving home and you're like, man, that song is good. Like, I had fun. But it was hard.
Yeah.
It was very hard to get to where we got today.
And that's a good sign when you leave and you still want to listen to it, because anyone who's watching this that is aspiring to be a producer someday or work in that asset, you will hear it over 100 times in a day.
Yes.
Easy. Probably closer to 200 times
Yes.
while the day's over.
I think what bothers me is when I'm trying to go to sleep and it's just like on loop.
Yeah, dude.
And I'm like, please stop. But then when I start singing it the next day or singing it the day after, then I'm like, okay, that was fun, obviously. But yeah, when you hear it 100 or 200 times, you're like, I just need anything else.
Yeah.
I drive home in silence a lot of the time.
Oh, same. Big time. Big time.
I can't do it unless I need an earworm to get it out of my head or something. But
yeah.
It's not often the artist's fault, but it's just repetitive nature.
It was a repetition of it. Yeah. I actually sometimes in the past when I was doing long studio days, I'd have that problem too, and it didn't go away until I started listening to like a meditation soundscape before I was going to bed, and it actually like really pulled it out of my head and let me sleep. So if you ever want to try that, man, I just look up music like rain soundscape or like rainforest soundscape and just put my earbuds in, and like I'll be asleep in 3 minutes after that.
So yeah, I think we had a question online that I think we want to touch on a little bit. When taking a new project, when somebody reaches out to you, how do you decide the splits of the song, how you're going to get, producer credits, and what makes sense for you as a producer when you're proposed a new project from somebody?
Sure. Producing and session work are a little bit different because as a session player, I'm looking for my day rate. I'm looking to get paid for my time. I'm not necessarily worried about master points or publishing. If I'm working in a band scenario, it's a little different, and it's kind of a situation based, who's involved in what way and the time given and the, whether it's a time sacrifice or whatever. But for session work, that's kind of usually how I do it, is just pay my day rate or pay half my day for 4 hour, either 4 hour session or an 8 hour session. I have two different rates for those. And as a producer, I charge a daily rate that is more than my session rate because I'm going to play drums on it most likely. There's actually, Bleau is the only other artist that I've played with that we have another drummer come in and play a lot of the tunes. The first couple we did with Bleau, I played on, but my good friend and a dude who I've called over the years many times to do gigs for me or vice versa, first call kind of guy. Todd Watts is his name. Killer drummer, Detroit drummer. Todd plays with Bleau live a lot. Todd understands his style a lot. It's different than the way I play. I'm a very groove driven drummer. I sit in the pocket. I find a pocket. I stay there. Todd has just a little bit of a different flavor than I have, and it's cool because over the years we've actually done double drums at Midwest Riders gigs where Todd will be on a kit and I'll be on a kit and we'll be playing together.
That's fun.
And I'm kind of using like shakers and tambourines and like playing toms like timbales, and he'll be just like rocking the groove and doing different fills and stuff. So he's the only other drummer I've ever met that I can also play with as a drummer. So Todd just, he has a way with Bleau, and the way he plays just matches Bleau really, really well. But other than that, I mean, if I'm going to come in and produce, most of the time I'm going to play the drums on it. And so on top of me playing drums, I'm going to be there the whole day and focus my mental energy on your song. And I'm going to give opinions, and we're going to go back and forth between me and said artist. So that's why I charge more for my producing, right? And so with that comes producer credits. I ask for producer credit. It's a conversation I always have before we go into the studio. Is this going to be a co-production between you and I, or are you hiring me as a producer? Because we need to get those two things figured out from the get-go so that the egos don't start coming at each other.
Stepping on each other's toes, you're not contradicting each other.
Exactly, and that's the last thing I ever want to do is step on an artist's toes. It's their vision, it's their song. But if you're an artist and you come to me and say, this is what I'm thinking, but I don't really know how to do it or where to bring it, and I want you to produce it, that's one thing versus, hey, I got a lot of ideas, but I really want your input on this. Can you co-produce this with me?
Yes, those are two very different hats.
Absolutely.
And I think that can be a tough decision because you off the top you're trying to decide how much time is this going to be, how much energy. As a producer, you're walking in, you're wearing all the hats. You're going to be playing your drums, and you're also going to be giving input to everybody else on their parts. Mm-hmm. So it's
speaking the language, because a lot of times I've worked with a lot of artists over the years that they play a little guitar, they play a little piano, they play some chords, but they're not full blown guitar piano players. They're not as much of a musician as much as they're a singer and a songwriter. So being that bridge as a producer between the artist and the players is a very important. There's a translation coming between you and the artist, and then there's a translation that you make to the musician. If they're saying they want it green, you're like, all right, man, you need to back off in the verse and whatever. You know what I mean? You got to translate for them.
Yeah, that lingo again.
Yeah,
man. It's funny times those. Maybe people who don't play the instrument as well, like you said, they have lingo. And you're like, I need to decode this to tell the other people what they're trying to say.
Yeah, vocabulary as a musician is such an important thing. Such an important thing.
Very cool. Well, yeah, it sounds like a pretty diplomatic way to...
Could we actually go back to the beginning of the question a little bit more? What percentages do you typically take? Is it 20% or 50% or 10%? Or does it, how do you decide that? And then does that change how much you charge for your day rate? Or do you do song rates? Or there's so much there, and there's so many different opportunities, because sometimes I know a song is going to get a lot of streams, and so I as a producer will do it for free, taking royalties, knowing that I'm going to get more in royalties than I will taking my day rate and that kind of thing. So yeah, I guess how do you deal with that?
Unless I change a word, one word in a lyric, I do not ask for publishing, because I'm not a writer and publishing is for writers. Everybody has a different way about it. Oftentimes I will change words if I'm producing with an artist, and that's when I'll add a percentage on for publishing. I've always gone by the add a word, get a third type of idea, where it's kind of a Nashville thing where it's there's two writers writing together, but you add someone walks in and adds a word to the song. Legally, they're a co-writer on that song, so they get a third of that publishing. So that's generally how I do it. And again, I tell people up front that I think that's a really, really important thing if you're going to be a producer. Put everything out in the open about how you need it, and explaining to the artist what that means for them too, because a lot of times they don't know what that means. Or talking to if they have a manager or something like that, because as soon as lines start getting blurred is when things get weird and people cut off ties and don't want to see each other, and they start talking shit about each other. And I really haven't had any of those scenarios, but I've seen it over the years happen many times with bands on percentages, with artists and co-writers on percentages. So say an artist that comes to me and you say, you want me to produce? I say, okay, I'm going to produce a song. I'm going to tell you up front, if I change any words, which we're probably going to change a word or two, I'm going to get part of that publishing, and it's going to be split. That's just how things work in the industry traditionally between writers. But again, it's different with every situation, every scenario. I often ask them what they want to, because I'm not going to say who, but for an artist that I do work with, he splits it between everybody because everybody is involved with the entire process.
Yeah, for sure. I think the bands that split things evenly tend to stay together longer. Like Bon Jovi, I think, is one of those that famously splits everything evenly.
Yep.
Even though there's a front man.
Absolutely. I think it's different for every band, because every band is, I've seen bands where the lead singer is doing everything, writing, demoing, and then the guys don't even play on the record that are in the band. I've seen lead singers not show up until they're recording, and the band has recorded everything. And I don't know what a lot of those bands' percentages, how they go in that way. I just know what has worked for me. And I think if everybody's democratic about it, it's always better. But it's always most important to talk about it up front.
I agree with you. Talking about it up front, being a little bit uncomfortable with that conversation or whatever, the uncomfortable type of conversation, but getting it out of the way. Yep. It's much easier to do it first, and then maybe you have a terrible argument with that person, then you just don't work with them.
Then you learn, because better now than later.
Exactly, because if you spend all that time and then maybe their personalities don't vibe or whatever, they're going to be really petty about something later. It's better to just get it out of the way. And I think it is, it's going to make for a better product too, because you don't have to think about it later. Done. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to be withholding ideas maybe. But also it's just about establishing that rapport. Yeah. Hopefully, for the best.
Definitely. And not being afraid to say no if it's not right. That's a big thing, that like, if you're willing to compromise, then compromise. If you're not, that's okay. Like that doesn't say anything bad about you as a person or a producer or an artist, or, you got to have your level of what you're willing to do and what you're willing not to do. And everybody has a different place for that. It's very subjective. But when it gets in between musicians and money and percentages and all, everything starts getting real squirrely, because like we talked about, musicians are such emotional people. We really care about what we do. So if you can be really black and white on the front with that stuff, I just think it makes everything so much better later.
Yeah, I have a cool example of this that I read or heard somewhere on an interview, that the Black Keys, this kind of conversation isn't something that just happens to, I'm trying to think of a nice word, people who aren't famous, let's say. The Black Keys famously had made a name for themselves, and then they worked with Danger Mouse, and he produced their record that really pushed them up to the next level, and they kind of screwed him over on the rights and the publishing and the production, but they didn't know. At the end of the process, Danger Mouse, whatever, they said, hey, this is a 50-50 thing. I don't know if they cut him money or whatever, cut him a check, but he said, you guys screwed me on this, and you should know that I should be a third of this. But they famously, they didn't know any better. They were always a duo. They had always made it work. It worked that way for them. And it was a learning experience. And that's where I've heard, I think Patrick, the drummer, talk about this on some interview, that it was just this naive thing for them. So they did bring Danger Mouse back, and right off the top, they did a 3-way split. They just knew right away that was going to be the case. I only mention this because it's like, it seems like the business talk can be overlooked, right? And there's so many stories for the last 60 years of people that get screwed on something and they don't own anything. They sign some contracts or whatever, right? It's not about being naive to the point like you're just new or fresh, but it can happen even later in a career. Like it, maybe for them it was like mid-career, I'm just saying, right? It's not like it's just being fresh out of college where you just don't know any better.
And that is a specific situation like you're talking about. It's like, and that's why these types of things are so situational. I do think that it's not right for everybody, but when you start getting serious about it, you need to have a entertainment lawyer. It's important. You don't even know until you're in the situation that you need one, but having someone to just reach out to and be like, hey, I'm thinking about this kind of split with this project that I'm doing in this way. If you got to pay them, for 20 minutes for them to have a conversation with you, it's worth it. It really is. Like I can tell you from my own personal experience, having someone, they're legally obligated to give you good advice. But when you're talking about splits and stuff like that, I think it's important to have a third party when it's getting serious, I will say, versus when this is a passion project that I really want to see what happens,
Wonderful. So thanks so much for that. Thanks to everybody for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe. We have plenty more of these candid conversations with musicians, where we want to be interviewing musicians like Dalton to really get to understand what it's like to be out there, working, because these are really, really valuable details for us. We're all trying to continue to grow our professional career, so we want to understand how we can all be better, and we want to share that with you. So please make sure to subscribe and like. I wanted to ask you just 2 more questions.
That's so cool, man. You guys got a really cool thing going on with this. I really dig it.
Thanks for being here. We really appreciate you reaching out. So if you're an artist out there too and you want to do this, please reach out to us and we'd love to have you. All right, I'm going to ask you a silly question first.
Cool.
Give me a hot take.
Just any hot take?
Give me a hot take on music. I don't care if it's a band, a production, person, just a hot take on music. Just think about it in a real quick, give me a 30-second, like, I hate Billie Eilish albums.
No. I love Billie Eilish. I love Billie Eilish. I hate pop music. And I hate a lot of the last 5 years of pop music. I think it's trash. I think there's some good ones. I think Billie's one of those. But I think there's a lot of trash out there, and I think there's a lot of trash country out there. And it's sad to see because I love both of them.
Man, especially in Nashville, I'm sure
you're
it's inundated.
So tough. It's so tough sometimes, man. You hear the same song at 3 different venues of 3 artists with their own. It's their own song, but it sounds the same.
So the last question here I'm going to ask you, this is our tagline for this series, and we want to make sure we ask everybody that we get in here the same question to see some cohesion. So how would you define success as a musician? This can be as far as, it doesn't have to be necessarily about money. It can be kind of whatever you feel in your heart is like, the first answer you have.
I think there's 2 different things with it. There's personally, what I view as success, I want to pay for my life. I want to have a career in this and be able to do this the rest of my life with my income. That to me is success of like, this is how I want to spend my journey. This is the path I want to go down. And I don't really want to do anything else. And I think there's a more universal thing about it too that's important, that it's like success in being successful in this is being inspired on what you're working with and who you're working with and what you're creating together. I think that tops everything, because if you're not inspired, it's like, why are you doing it? And you do things at different times. You take these bar gigs, or you do this or you do that you feel like it's not exactly what you want to be doing, but it's still better than the other option of whatever that is for you. So I think being inspired by the people you're with is huge. It's huge for me. And I think there's a middle ground between those. I want to be able to make a living and be inspired by the people I'm working with and the music that we're working on together.
Cool. That's a beautiful answer. I think that's why we're all here. We want to keep having fun. We want to keep loving this and feeling inspired, right? That's kind of what you were saying.
Yeah.
I guess emotional beings is what you
Emotional beings. We are emotional beings.
Well, cool. Well, thanks so much for being here. Dalton Thomas here.
Absolutely.
Drummer, producer from Nashville, Tennessee, living in Nashville, Tennessee now, playing with Brother Elsey. Got some tours coming up. And tell me again the other guy you're playing with soon.
Yeah, actually, I'm from Heartland, Michigan. So
Heartland, Michigan.
From Heartland, Michigan, live in Nashville. I'm going to be on the road with a guy named Paul McDonald.
Perfect. So you'll see him on the road with Paul McDonald and then also Brother Elsey sometime this year as well. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, man.
So please make sure all you people out there like and subscribe our channel. We would love to see the support. So thanks so much for being there with us today, and we'll see you next time.